Welcome to the deep dive. We basically pull out the key stuff from complex sources so you get the picture fast. Today we're tackling a text called Scientific Tafsir of the Quran, Part 1.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. It tries to look at the Quran through, well, a scientific lens.
Specifically chapters 1 to 9, so that includes the opening, guidance for the guards, and the war book.
Exactly, and the goal really is for listeners to get a handle on its core ideas about God, the universe, reality, all from this particular viewpoint.
Got it. Okay, so let's start with chapter 1, Al-Fatiha. The opening, the text makes a point about its status, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Something about it being outside the main Quran.
Yeah, it references Al-Quran 15.87 to suggest Al-Fatiha is more like a preface.
A preface. What's its job then, according to this view?
Well, it introduces the God of the Quran, kind of sets the stage, motivating worship, unity, that sort of thing.
And guiding people.
Yes, guiding those seeking the straight path. It even draws a parallel to the Gospel of Mark in terms of its guiding function.
Interesting. Okay, that's section 1 of that chapter, the God of the Quran. A big concept seems to be Allah as Rab.
Right, the sustainer and evolver, that's the translation used of the Alamin, the universe.
Universe is plural. But the text has a specific idea about Alamin, you mentioned. It's not quite the standard multiverse idea.
No, not really. It talks about Alamin, but emphasizes more of a finely tuned universe, referencing Al-Quran 67.03. It focuses on our universe and its structure.
Okay, and structure involves the 7 skies. What are those in this interpretation?
So instead of separate heavens piled up, it pictures them as these like enormous waves, supergiant waves of space itself.
Waves of space.
Yeah.
Wow, and this ties into a whole cosmic model.
Yeah, a cyclical one. It proposes a Big Bang one, then a contraction phase, followed by a big bounce. That's our current cycle, apparently. Then a big crunch, and eventually a Big Bang 2.
A whole cycle. And where do things like Jannat fit in? You mentioned separate universes earlier.
Right. So Jannat is presented as another universe, sort of parallel to ours, and just as vast. It cites verses like Al-Quran 3.133.
And our universe is the Samawat.
Samawat refers to our skies and lands, yeah. And beyond that, well, it gets pretty intricate. There's the Arsh, which is beyond something called superspace.
Superspace.
Yeah, and then there's the Kursi, which is related to the Arsh. Then superspace itself, a barrier realm called Barzakh.
Okay, hold on. Barzakh, Arsh, Kursi.
And Araf, an elevated place, channels connecting things. Sidratul Muntaha as a kind of communications hub. Sort of. And Ilion and Sijin described almost like holographic worlds within that Barzakh barrier. It's a very detailed cosmology.
Definitely sounds like it.
Yeah.
Now, something that really jumped out was the idea about God's form. The text mentions a human-like form.
It does, yeah. It references Genesis and a Hadith,
Yeah.
but then it also talks about God being everywhere.
Right. How does it square that form versus omnipresence?
Through the concept of Ruh, it's presented as an elementary soul, or maybe think of it like a force field. A command of God that extends everywhere.
So God's presence is like a field.
Kind of. And it makes a distinction between this elementary Ruh and Nafs, which is described as a composite soul, like a combination of these fields.
Okay. Ruh and Nafs.
And then it connects something called Nafsin Wahidatin, a single Nafs, to the GUT force from physics.
The grand unified theory force.
Really? Yeah, suggesting that this single nafs is like the fundamental origin point of creation, linked to that initial unified force scientists theorize about.
Wow. Okay, so if God extends these ruhs, these force fields, how does that translate to sustaining and evolving the universe day to day?
The text links it to the term istawa, citing verses like Al-Quran 41.1112. It's about God extending these elementary souls into the cosmos.
And these souls are like fundamental forces.
That's the idea presented. Examples given are gravity, dark energy, vacuum energy, even quantum fields. These forces are seen as expressions of God's extended Ruh sustaining everything.
So the laws of physics are, in a way, these extensions.
That seems to be the interpretation, yeah. It even briefly touches on how God became God, suggesting a development from an eternal nafs.
A development? That's unexpected.
It's definitely a unique part of this interpretation, and it all ties into the concept of Yom Adin, the day of law.
Which isn't just Judgment Day here.
Not solely. It's interpreted also as the day God fixed the natural laws for a particular cosmic cycle. And since the universe is cyclical in this view, there could be multiple days of law.
Right, establishing the rules for each iteration of the universe.
Exactly. While we focused on cosmology, the later chapters obviously apply this scientific lens to guidance, rules, even conflict.
So wrapping this up, This first part of the scientific tafsir offers a, well, really distinct view. You've got this cyclical universe, different interconnected realms.
And a God who has a form but is also present everywhere through these fundamental force fields, these rus.
All operating under laws set during specific cosmic moments, these days of law. It's quite a synthesis.
It absolutely is a real blend of theology and scientific concepts, as interpreted by the author, of course.
It leaves you thinking, here's something to mull over. If you frame things with this day of law, idea laws being fixed for a cycle, how does that change how you think about cause and effect? Does it make things feel more determined, or?
That's a great question. How does a framework of established, possibly cyclical laws affect our view of why things happen? Definitely something to ponder, and maybe a reason to check out the source itself for more depth.